Mr. President, the House Republican leadership's plan that is now out and people have taken a look at it, it's a plan to advance an extreme piece of legislation, and it's nothing more than a blatant attack on bipartisanship. For the past several days, we've been engaged in productive bipartisan negotiations in the Senate. Everyone knows that. We've been working across party lines and making steady progress to achieve an agreement that reopens a government, protects the full faith and credit of our great country, and opens talks to put this country on a firm fiscal footing. Everyone needs to know that the measure under discussion in the House is no part of what we've negotiated here in the Senate. Mr. President, the debt is here. The deadline is looming. Rating agencies are talking about downgrading us as early as tonight. Again. I know I speak for many of us who've been working in good faith when I say that we felt blindsided by the news from the House. But this isn't the first time. Extremist Republicans in the House of Representatives are attempting to torpedo the Senate's bipartisan progress with a bill that can't pass the Senate, and won't pass the Senate. The House measure would take away the President's fundamental authority. It's been in existence for as long as political science can remember. It's been in place for decade after decade after decade to prevent a catastrophic default on the nation's bills. Out of spite, Tea Party Republicans are trying to take authority away from President Obama. They would never, ever consider doing this if it were President Romney, President Bush, or President Bush, or President Reagan. Never. But as they've said, and they've cheered over there, the government's closed. We don't mind defaulting on the debt. It's good for the country. That's what they've said. Their legislation would also make unacceptable major changes to Obamacare. House legislation doesn't even include a process for bipartisan negotiations on a sensible long-term budget. They just throw out these numbers and think magic's going to happen, and somehow, comes January 15th, everything will be hunky-dory. There are still processes we have to follow. They set no pattern, no schedule, no routine to do that. For weeks, Republicans have claimed they want to negotiate, but their legislation completely ignores the need to work together to craft a budget and put our country on a fiscally sustainable path. For years, Mr. President, they've complained about, why don't we have a regular order here? They complained about a lack of a budget. Now they don't want us to even negotiate a budget. Hard to comprehend this logically. But, Mr. President, the Tea Party-driven part of the Republican Party doesn't follow logic. Or why would they want to close the government for 15 days, have us default on our debt? Introduction of this measure by House Republican leadership is unproductive and a waste of time. Let's be clear. The House legislation will not pass the Senate. And here is what the White House said just a few minutes ago. Quote, "The President has said repeatedly that members of Congress don't get to demand ransom for fulfilling their basic responsibilities to pass a budget and pay the nation's bills. Unfortunately, the latest proposal from the House Republicans does just that in a partisan attempt to appease a small group of Tea Party Republicans who forced the government to shut down in the first place." I'm very disappointed with John Boehner, who would once again try to preserve his role at the expense of the country. I've worked hard to rise above partisanship and find common ground in the Senate. And, Mr. President, we've done that together for the good of the nation. This is much bigger than the senator who's presiding from the state of Hawaii, or the assistant leader who's to my side. This is much bigger than that. It's much bigger than me. It's much bigger than two senators who are here from Connecticut. We have the senator who's chairman of the Budget Committee, Senator Murray. It's bigger than her. It's bigger than the senior senator from New York, Senator Schumer, who's on this floor. Mr. President, we have to start working together for our country. That's what we've been trying to do. This is so disappointing. On the eve of financial destruction for this great country, and that's what it is, to appease a small group of people over there. I'm so disappointed.